Hi everyone, Don Famularo back again, the Artist Series at a Distance, the Sessions panel. This keeps on getting better and better and better. And today I have got an absolutely phenomenal musician. Would you all please welcome Mr. Ralphe Armstrong.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here at the Sessions.
Ralphe, it's great to see you again. We had the chance of being on a panel together in Detroit for the Sessions panel with Bernard Purdy and Lib DeVito and Paul Quinn and so many great artists that have joined us. And what was so impressive is the stories that you told to not only all the students, but just what we enjoyed on the panel was absolutely legendary. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, man. It's good. After this pandemic, it's good to see humans. It's good to be on Zoom, and it's nice to see them walk.
Well, you know, Ralphe, you have got some story. And if anyone needs to have that story told, it's you, because it was so interesting. So I got to go back first to you. In your family, you grew up with music in the household, correct?
That's right. My father was born in La Follette, Tennessee, actually Dayton, Tennessee, which is near La Follette, and he played the violin. His name was Howard Armstrong, and the stage name is Louie Bluey. And they end up making a movie about my dad, man, because of him coming up in Tennessee. He played with Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs and Minnie Pearl and Grace Moore. You know, he's one of them Tennessee violin players. And when I was a kid, I saw Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry playing in the living room.
Unbelievable.
And they would come in from Chicago with a magnum full of scotch and milk because they couldn't drink it straight. They had bad stomachs, they had ulcers. And, you know, back in the day, those guys would stop at the Gibson plant and pick up a couple of guitars and bring them on in, you know, L5s and Super 400s, you know.
But your dad was a musician, he was a composer, he was a poet, he was a storyteller, he was a Renaissance man.
Right. Right. He played all instruments. He played the bass, he played the violin, the cello, the mandolin, which I have one of his instruments here, the ukulele, anything that had strings, he could play it. Cello, viola, all string instruments.
Where do you think he got that ability?
It's just in the blood. You know, back then, people didn't have all of the stuff we have today. They to entertain themselves, they played music, you know, and then a lot of, you know, back in when he was, you know, 19, 18 and stuff, they didn't hardly have radios up in the hills, you know, coal country. They didn't have it, man. So you got around on Sundays and played and you sang songs to entertain yourself, especially after church, you know.
So when did you start playing an instrument and how did you eventually evolve to bass?
Wow, this is God. I gotta start over with this in my brain. I started at the age of 7. My father built me a bass. He took an old German neck. The neck, had to be back then about 150 years old. So he made this square body with a round hole, like a guitar. And the reason why I wanted to play the bass, my father always wanted me to play the violin, and I couldn't get a sound out of that thing. It was squeak, squeak, squeak. I don't want to play the violin. I hate it. And I'm telling you how it started. I hated the violin. So one Sunday afternoon after church, we went by my Uncle L.C.'s house. His name is Lee Crockett. And he had this beautiful golden K bass violin. And he was sharp. He had his suit, and, you know, he was playing the bass, deep, rich tone. It shook the chandelier. I said, Daddy, I want to play the bass. I want to play like Uncle Elsie. I want to play the violin. And I almost pulled my dad's pants off of him. Everywhere he'd move, I hold on to his pants, like, Daddy, I want to play the bass. You know, until he doesn't pop me upside the head. Then about an hour later, I want to play the bass. So that's how I got started, loving the tone of this wonderful, gothic, rich, spiritual instrument. Because the bass is a religious instrument.
How's that?
Well, Gregorian chants were written for the bass. The bass, the viol, is the instrument of the Catholic Church. Going back to Gaspar de Solo, 1542, and Giovanni Pablo Maggini, you know, and Jakob Stein of Innsbruck, Austria. around 1640, 1660.
So you start playing the bass. When did you first get your own bass guitar?
Well, believe it or not, this is a weird story, man. 1967, my brother had a singing group, and they had this guy. They would rehearse over my house, and he played this bass. He had a Gibson, like a EB bass, like the one that looks like maybe like a 335. And he was sitting there with his pipe in his mouth, and he was playing boom, 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 boom. It was a song called "Hole in the Wall," and I said, "I want to play the electric, Dad." So my father went out. I think it was for my 12th birthday, and bought me. Now, dig this. This is something that's really spooky. He bought me a Framus Star bass, a German bass and I'm using Warwick's, today. Isn't that something?
That's really amazing.
Yeah, and I ended up playing that. And the first person I met that I played electric with was Carolyn Franklin, Aretha's sister. She was the one that actually discovered me as a kid. And she started nurturing me, and I would play over Aretha's house. And actually was a grandmother was living there. They call her Big Mama. I was sitting there every other Friday. My dad said, "You go with her. That's Reverend Franklin's daughter." So that's how I got started with the electric. And then later in life, I had a teacher who was Alfred Hickman at middle school, at Barber Junior High School. And this cat introduced me to Paul Chambers and Miles Davis, because Miles Davis was his paper boy. He came from East St. Louis. His name was Alfred Hickman. Never forget the man as long as I live. And he introduced me to jazz. He was the first guy that really introduced me to jazz.
So did you start taking lessons from anyone locally? How'd you start to learn? Did you listen to recordings?
Well, I listened to, I come up listening to all the Chitlin circuit. Being in Detroit, I listened to James Jamerson so much. I went to Cass Tech High School, and my father and this man named O'Neill Swanson, he was an undertaker, raised money for me to go to Interlochen. And that's where I met my teacher, and he's still alive. The man is still alive. He's 97 years old, and he was the first classical teacher that didn't scare the boo-boo out of me. His name is Larry Hurst. He was head of the music at University of Michigan, and I had a King bass. My father bought me a King bass, and I wanted this shiny Schroeder German bass, and my father almost cussed me out. He's like, "What do you want that thing for? This is an old bass." And I wish, it's a funny thing, you live and learn. My father recognized the tone of this instrument. See, that's what it is about a bass that's important. It's the sound. It could be made from Kmart, is how it sounds. Yeah. So I had this King bass, and I went to Interlochen, and I had a teacher named Robert Warner. He was the first chair player in the Seattle Symphony. And he started giving me Dragonetti concertos. And I was playing with gut strings, and I was into reading about Domenico Dragonetti, Daco the Dragon, and all of that, the concertos. And it's a funny thing, I was really like old fashioned when I went to Interlochen. I played with the gut strings, and I was walking, Interlochen is like a camp. You're like in a country. So I'm walking with my bass, and this conductor, I stopped by the World Youth Symphony. And this conductor was cussing the orchestra out. And he called them names that I can't even repeat on the sessions. You prima donnas, you know nothing. I'll take this to the black kid. Come here. You come and see here. Come here. And I was scared to death. And guess who that man was? Leonard Bernstein. And he let me play in the World Youth Symphony because he felt that I had this sound. He liked the old sound because the kids there, they had instruments back then with $3,000 and $4,000 with, Paraxa strings, Lycons and all of that. I was just using our tone like Paul Chambers cut strings. But that's how I really got started with the technique of the bass. And then after that, the person who gave me discipline with it was Ron Carter. Ron Carter mentored me at the age of 14. Now, after Ron, this man gave me lessons, pointers. I was his pet, and his name was James Jamerson.
So you got to Interlochen, you were about 16 years old.
No, I was there. I started at 14.
14, that's amazing.
14.
So, and how long were you there for?
Oh, I went there for about 3 years. 3 years on and off. I did one semester, and then I went to the summer camp for 2 years.
So the kind of music you were learning, some classical music, were you playing much jazz there?
Guess what? This is a funny thing. I was introduced to a young man. I was playing jazz, practicing, trying to be like Ray Brown, walking a bass. And this young kid from New York, young Jewish kid, his name is Alan Gerber. I don't know if you know him. He used to play on the Tonight Show, and he's the first person I ever played jazz with in my life. Alan Gerber. He lives in New York City. He's an accomplished musician. He plays with Bernard Purdy. You know, me and Alan, we keep in touch through the internet. You know, but he was the first cat I ever played jazz with.
When you started playing jazz, were there any specific tunes you were playing? You were playing, standards. What were you playing?
The first thing I started to play was the blues, walking the blues. There's blues like Straight No Chaser and Tenor Madness, boop, boop, ba doo bout, and boop, da bump, swinging, just walking the bass. And that's the foundation of learning the bass violin, is getting the notes to be consistent in time. And then the technique comes into play, playing the right notes. And that came from a man in 1870. His name was Joseph Habibs. He was a professor at the University of Prague in Czechoslovakia, and he invented the 12 positions for the double bass. And his student was Franz Simandl. A lot of people don't know who Simandl's teacher was. So his teacher invented the technique that we have today. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. And at the 7th position, you drop the 4th finger when you get to the harmonic. And then you go down with the thumb. I can't show you all of that here.
But this is great information. The bass players are going to love this in just the technical understanding. So how did you go from Interlochen to John McLaughlin?
I love you, Dom. I love you. Because let me tell you something. You hit the nail on the head, because if it wasn't for my classical training from Interlochen, there's no way in the world I could have played that music with John McLaughlin. Broken seventh down, bom, 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 bee, boo, bee, boo, boo, bee, boom, boo, 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 boo. I mean, I had to figure the fingering out. So all of this came into play. Now, I'm going to tell you who was really instrumental, besides Michael Narda-Wallen and my friend Sandy Toronto, and getting me that gig. James Jamerson introduced me to the fretless bass guitar. When John McLaughlin saw me play that, heard me play my fretless Candy Apple Red Precision, he was like, "Oh, Ralph, I can't, this sound." And I'm like, "I don't know, it sounded right to me." I wasn't nothing special, because Jocko at that same time auditioned for John. We were in Canaan, Connecticut, but I got the gig because I played the fretless bass. James Jamerson, I never forget it. We were at this club called Watts Mozambique in Detroit. And he sat down. He had just got through playing with Carolyn Franklin, because Carolyn was always taking me places. Yeah. So he said, "I'm going to teach you. You got to learn the technique. If people want to know why I can play the technique, play the fretless bass, because I got the technique. And I play the fretless Fender." And I said, "I never seen anything like this." So what I did, I looked in a 1972 catalog, and there was a fretless Fender bass. And I went to Auto Fortuna. My mother got me this bass. I had to pay $15 a week because I was playing up at the Harper Rec I made $30 a week as a kid. And he ordered this neck and changed it, put a fretless precision neck on my bass. And that's how I got the gig with John McLaughlin. So now this is the weird part of all of this. So John says, "Oh man, I'm going to call you, man. I'm going to do this. I'm going to call you." And I'm like, yeah, he don't call us black kid from Detroit, you know. So one January, I'll never forget how long as I live, it was a snowstorm. There was no school. And I get a call. And he says, Ralph, this is Mahavishnu. And I'm like, what? And he says, I want you to talk to somebody who wants you to play with him. And guess who was on the line, Don?
Who?
Carlos Santana. I was like, have you ever seen this movie with Don Knotts, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken? I was like, I was so nervous, I needed the pins. And Carlos, I want you to, this is David Deep. I want you to play. And I'm like, what? And guess what? 2 months later, they sent me an airplane ticket. I was in New York. I was working for Weiss and Maybach. Nathan Weiss, the great entertainment lawyer. And what was so funny about Nat Weiss, he managed Chick Corea. He had Stanley Clark, Lenny. That's how I met them. Larry Coryell. Yeah. He was managing all the groups. Cat Stevens in the day.
Yeah.
And I was in, before I knew it, I was in London. I was in London at Air Studio with Sir George Martin.
Sir George Martin, who was produced the Beatles. I mean, these are names of people. Santana, Jean-Luc Ponty, Herbie Hancock, I mean, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. I mean, there's some serious...
You know, I work with Frank too, right?
How did you get involved with Frank Zappa?
Well, we were doing tours, Mahavishnu and Zappa. And when Mahavishnu broke up, I stayed unemployed for like 4 days. He was like, Ralph, why don't you play bass with me? Come on. Man, I love Frank was a good guy. He treated me wonderfully. See, it's a funny thing about guys like Frank Zappa. He was very similar to Aretha Franklin and a little bit like Miles. He was perfectionist. Yeah. But if you gave 100%, you had no problems with him. Yeah. You know, it's like, Ralph, I'm gonna call you. We're going over to Canada. And he put me on salary. You know, I think Terry Bozzio was in the group. He was, Frank was a little hard on him, you know, but Frank, I had a great rapport with Frank Zappa. I even have to this day, this is something I've never told anybody on the internet. I have some music written by Frank Zappa that was written for me. It's about 9 pages. And I still, after all these years, I can only play about 4 of the pages. It's like 64th notes in 30 seconds. You know, Frank was a master writer. His penmanship is better than any computer you can find today. So we went on a tour, and I was kind of burnt out from traveling with Frank, you know, because I was on the road with John. We would leave out for 9, 10 months. It was crazy. Then I went with Zappa. It was like being in the Army. Get up in the morning, get up at 7, eat breakfast, get on the airplane at 8, get to the venue, go to your hotel room for 30 minutes, go to the venue, sit at the venue, sound check for an hour, eat dinner for an hour, go back to the hotel for an hour, go to the gig. The only free time you had was midnight.
So this was a discipline that you had to learn, or was this something that you felt comfortable doing?
Well, I learned it, you know, I went to, like, Interlochen was a military camp, you know, and plus my father was Navy. So I had a lot of discipline as a kid. You know, I knew how to get up and take care of business. He wasn't going to have it. You know, he was a disciplinarian, you know, and he was a wonderful father, you know, but you had to do stuff. You had to take care of business. You had to be punctual. And that's something that musicians are lacking today.
That's a very, very good point. You know, part of what we try and do here with the Artist Series is to let musicians know of some of the tools that they need to have, and punctuality. And it's not a matter of showing up on time. It's a matter of showing up early to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's right. You got to. And another thing, I hate to do this, but I am a staunch supporter of the American Federation of Musicians. I've been a union rep for years. I went to the Hill with Bob Cranshaw, who was the business rep of 802 in New York. Yeah. And we went with Congressman Conyers and Rangel for the HR 848 bill for musicians' rights. But I can't get young people to understand the value of joining a union. It's paramount to being professional. Every great musician on a planet Earth that is a member of the union. Carlos Santana, Frank Zappa, Herbie Hancock, Miles Dewey Davis. That's somebody else I work with too. But it's just on and on, man. And then when you get to my age, you get your pension. I just got my pension in September. It's the music business. And now I'm going to tell you a story real quick. I got to do this. You started this. I got to finish
this is good. This is very good.
Excuse my finger. But dig this, man. I'll never forget when we did the first recording, Apocalypse, with John McLaughlin. You had to be in the union or you were not getting paid.
Yeah.
I never forget. Nat Weiss told a certain violin player, it wasn't Jean Lupani, it was another one. He said, if you don't pay, we're going to take your money and forfeit it and spread it around, give it to Ralph and the rest of them. And the cat had to join. He didn't want to join the union. But hell, that money, believe it or not, me joining that, they paid him my pension fund to this day.
Well, this is great advice, Ralph. And what happens is the fact that with that, you're paying pension, you're paying dues into that. And that's what's coming back in the form of your pension.
Right. Well, you file, or like when you do television shows, especially like NBC, they have a contract with us. Like I've done a bunch of TV shows and they send residuals back. Yeah. And I put one of these rappers, God, I shouldn't have said it like that. One of the great rappers, his name was Proof. And he was part of the Rhythm Kitchen with D12 and Eminem's crew. And he begged me, man, they don't want to get a union, man. You know what I'm saying? Man, they ain't getting no residual there, man. He was looking at M's checks, and I think he's a member after SAG. He was SAG after, Hey, man, get it. So he joined the union. And they started sending him checks.
Let's talk about the business side of what this is about. The organizational skills that it takes to show up on time, to keep us a good calendar, to really be, know the music very well. You've been able to do that pretty consistent in your life.
Yes, I have. And when I first got married and I had children, I got off the road and I said, wow, I got I was not on salary with Frank anymore. So I had to make a living. So what I did, I ended up working for a contractor by the name of John Trudell, who was somebody I grew up with. He was like older than me, but he was a music contractor at the American Federation. So I started playing in the Fox Theater Orchestra. I played with Robert Goulet. I did all of what they call the legit music. Is the legit music. I did the Pinafore. I did all of that stuff to feed my children, Then I worked, I did Some Enchanted Evening. I played with Robert Goulet. He smoked a cigar and threw ashes on my bass, he's sitting there. He was a good guy, though, except for the cigar ash. I did all of the stuff, the classical. I've done, I played Patsy Cline show. I did a lot of country theater. This is theater. And they paid in the pension fund. So that's how I made my living when I wasn't traveling with the big shots,
So you had to go try and balance your musical career and now your family life.
Right. And that's something I took almost 20 years out of my career for my family.
Yeah.
And now it's just like God put everything on hold, man. I flew so much in 2019. I slept better on the airplane than the hotel. I was in Australia like 4 times,
Well, let's talk about that. So you've gone on now and you've continued at an incredible pace. How has the pandemic affected you these past couple of years?
Oh, it's been awful. Let me say this to you. I managed to do some things during the pandemic. I wrote a book. I couldn't travel, which was a drag, So I've been blessed now that everything is like, I'm bombarded with all of the work that I didn't have. It's like, I can't even keep up with all this stuff. But it made me practice and analyze myself. I never get bored. There's no way in the world I'm bored. I always have something to do.
So during the pandemic, as a kind of shift of the way we think, before the pandemic, you were traveling insanely.
Oh man, I flew with Delta. It was like 87,000 miles in 1 year. That was 2019. It's crazy.
I can relate to that. I understand the traveling.
Yeah,
It's a necessary evil to a certain point when you're traveling.
Right, but I wanted a break, but I wanted to come like this. So what's happened, I've been like playing in Detroit. I've got a place where I'm artist of residence. It's called Baker's Keyboard. And that's what the oldest jazz club in the world, even made Alex Trebek's Jeopardy. Mm-hmm. So I'm there every Friday and Saturday. And then next, where it's looking now, next year, it looks like I'll be getting out of here again.
So you're doing Baker's Keyboard Lounge. How about the Dirty Dog Jazz Cafe? You go to there?
I play there too. I play there at least twice a year.
And Burt's Marketplace?
Not much, not much, but I go there and play sometimes. But Baker's is a place that they treat the musicians very well. And the Dirty Dog is fantastic. Yeah. I recorded my first CD on Detroit Music Factory. That's part of Mack Avenue. And Gretchen Valade owns the company. She owns the Dirty Dog also.
So talk about that CD. In 2015, you put out Detroit Rising.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
That's my masterpiece. It's like a dream that came true for me. I have a friend of mine who financed it. His name is Chuck Pasquay. He's a beautiful human being. And he flew in. Guy Pratt from Pink Floyd came and played on it. He played bass on the stuff. He played with Michael Jackson. He came and played. And I had my dear friends. This is one of the last recordings they did. And that's Larry Coryell and Alphonse Mouzon. They played on it. And if you hear that song, it's called Jefferson Avenue Strut. And we talk at the end, we start laughing at the end of the recording.
But the music was so versatile. You had jazz, you had rock, you had fusion, you had blues, you had all different styles in it, which is an incredible, array of diverse music.
Yeah, well, that's me. I'm still a big kid at heart. I got a lot of rock and roll left in me. And I like electric music. See, I play traditional jazz. I play jazz, but I still like Iggy Pop. I play everything, man. I like Jeff Beck. I play with Beck. I like to play Jimi Hendrix on the bass. I want to hear the bass go. So, and then I like R&B. That's why they call it fusion.
Interesting. So, who would you say? What kind of musicians would you listen to that influenced you, that really kind of were so influential in your playing that you stole parts of their sound? Who would you say?
Well, I gotta admit this. I'm a product of James Jamerson because he actually taught me. He gave me pointers. Yeah. James was funny. He was like a guy. He didn't believe in like glissandos on the bass and all of that. He wasn't into that. He just wanted. He said, "You just played a note. I played a note of the bass. I tried to teach Michael how Henderson had to play the bass. He played a bass like the cello. He didn't like that. He was very much like Ray Brown. Matter of fact, that was his mentor. A lot of people don't know that. He was like Paul Chambers, Ray Brown. He would just want the note. And I understand that philosophy because Ron Carter taught me the fiddle. When I'm on a bass violin, I'm a totally different human being. It's another thing. I'm none of the craziness, but I'm just playing rich and melodic sounds.
So the instrument that you're playing really kind of dictates how you feel, the music you're playing, the musicians that you're playing with. There are many variables that will align you to what is needed at that moment.
Yeah, that's true. But what it comes to is the composition I'm playing, whatever type of music I'm playing. I try to blend in to whatever it is, And it's like when I'm playing with Aretha, when I used to play with Aretha, man, I would be playing like just laying in a pocket and playing the bottom. But a lot of people don't understand Aretha. She actually wanted you to play. She was not like a lot of singers. She didn't want you to just sit in the background. You had to play. Yeah. And by the way, I forgot to tell you, we forgot about my book, what I did during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, I want to hear about that. Now, I know during the pandemic, and listen, your story needs to have a book. This is fantastic. Look at this.
It's called Friend the Queen from Her Court Jester. As you can see, the clown. And and here's the back cover.
That is fantastic. Tell me about the book.
Well, the book is a tribute to Aretha because Aretha was my friend. And she actually told me why I was her friend. She said, "You're not scary like everybody else. You're crazy. That's what's wrong with you." And we were friends. Even when I did not play with Aretha Franklin, Dom, she would call me for her parties. I've got, in this book, it's a lot of personal memorabilia, a lot of funny stories. Let's see, let me find something real quick here. I had all kind of funny stories in here. Here's one of the last pictures of me and Aretha. This was her granddaughter's, graduation party.
Oh, Ralph, this is exciting.
And that's talking to a keyboardist. But what was so funny about Aretha, she wanted you to play. Yeah. You had to play. She was a lot like Miles Davis, because I played with Miles, That's another thing I can get to later. But the thing about Aretha, you had to play. And certain guys who are musicians that had the strength and the Lord testosterone, you were her friend, just like Bernard Purdy. And I never will forget, I called Aretha. I said, "Aretha, I'm with Chuck Rainey." And about 10 minutes later, she said, "Ralph, call me back. And she picked, we laughing, me and her and Chuck, because you had to play. There's one chapter in the book. We did Colgate University up in New York. And I'm playing with don't. Stop it. Stop the band. She's stopping an orchestra. And she says, "Ralph!" And she says, "I want to hear that strong bass." I was like, "Strong bass? I use deodorant. I want you to play. Come on out here." She had me come I needed the pins to the stage and do a solo. Isn't that something? That is incredible. And then you had to play, because I remember one time she said, "You ain't playing nothing that night." So next night I tried to play with my feet. She said, "Now you play." That's the kind of person she was. And I'm going to tell you something else about her. She was one generous human being. Yeah. She would always give you extra. I was her pet. Yeah. She docked people and she said, "Rev, here, it's an extra 500 for you." And they would get mad. "You think you something else. You think you're something else." I said, "Rita set up." She honestly treated me like a man of prominence. She always treated me. She said, "You don't want to play with me." And she always knew what I was doing. "Where you at? Tell a king I said hello. I'd be over in Monaco." She would, want to say hello to people. She was good. She was a good person. Good person. If you were down and needed help, Aretha would look out for you. She was great human being.
Well, this is
so buy my book when it's out.
This is so great that you have this book that you prepared. This is very exciting. I can't.
It's about love. And now I got to tell you one. I guess I'm going to say this I'm going to give you one funny story about this book. This is a true story. This is one chapter. I did Curtis Mayfield's last recording, New World Order, with Michael Narda Walden producing it.
Yeah.
So we're in the studio. And we had just finished, and it's out. You can hear it. It's called New World Order. The song is called "Let's Get Back to Living." So we started talking, about musicians, me, her, and Nard, about jazz. And I said, "Yeah, Aretha, I work with Miles, and I learned so much from Miles, And then Aretha, she said, "Yeah, I knew John Coltrane." So she was walking to the women's room. She looked back. She said, "Yeah, I knew John Coltrane, and he didn't wear no drawers." We fell out laughing. I mean, to musicians, John Coltrane is like a god, But then to hear somebody say he doesn't wear drawers, so that's in the book. It's a clean book. Kids can read it. It's clean. There's no profanity, nothing. salty in it, but that's the only thing that's on the edge.
I'm sure it's going to be very exciting to read, and I want everyone to absolutely pick up the book and enjoy it. So tell me about Miles. What was it like with Miles?
Miles, the short time I was with Miles, this was back at the end of 76. Michael Henderson quit Miles to do a singing career. So he told Miles, he said, Miles, you got to get Ralph, get on the play. So Miles called me and said, I want you to practice. And I want you to find some little kids. I said, yeah, Miles, yeah. And I want you to see what they playing. I said, yeah, Miles, yeah. And if it's hip, I want you to steal it. I said, yeah, Miles, yeah. And then bring it to me. Miles, he was always into what young people were doing. Because I was young at that time. I think I was like, I'm about 21 years old, 21. And we were going out of town. We were actually going to Montreux, Switzerland, but let me go retro on that. So Miles comes to see me play. I was with Curtis Fuller at Bill Cosby's joint in the Village. So I called Miles and Miles, I'm here. Miles, I'm in New York. Miles said, I'll be through. So I'm playing, we're swinging, and Marcus Belgrave and Harold McKinney, they're like a Detroit all-star group. Roy Brooks, great Roy Brooks on drums. So Miles comes in there, man. He had a pink crushed velvet suit on like Prince. And he looked at me and pointed and said, fat boy. And then like this. And walked out. I started almost to cry. I said, Miles, come back. So the next day I called Miles. He picked up the phone. He says, I just wanted to hear you play one note. You got a fat sound. You got to get. and we talked, and he sent me compositions and stuff. I got some of the stuff too. So it was just a blessing, man. What a wonderful life and career I've had, really.
Well, that's something which is incredible to be proud of, Ralph.
Yeah, it's a blessing. God is good. I have no regrets in my life. I could have done some things better. Only regret I had to leave Herbie Hancock for John McLaughlin. But it all worked out good. Now let me tell you about that. Miles had a car accident. A lot of people don't know that. That movie that came out, that first movie with Don Cheadle, if you watch the movie, Don Cheadle is actually limping. Miles had a car accident in 1977. I think it's around the wintertime. And he broke his leg. And that kept him out of music for 8 years. So I was sad. So what happened, I'm going to play A.B. Fisher with Frank Zappa. So I'm going to New York. So back then, on United Airlines, the airplane stops in Chicago. So I get on the airplane, and Zappa always gave us business class, first class tickets, So I'm in first class, and I sit next to the guy. Guess who it is? It's Herbie Hancock. And he's like, hey, man, I'm going to see Miles, man. And I know y'all again, because Miles, they talk. He said, well, you're not working with Miles. Well, why don't you come and play bass for me? That's how I got to get with Herbie. That's some divine intervention. So I've been blessed in my life. And I enjoy playing with Herbie and James Levi and Wah Watson, Blackbird. And then we did one recording, Moving Traffic, with Benny Maupin. He had Dr. Eddie Henderson playing. And just great Patrice Rushen was on keyboard.
Yeah, she's fantastic. So
that whole group was like Herbie's band. We all did Benny's recording.
How have you organized all of this? I mean, here you are getting calls for recordings, for traveling. You've got your family. How do you organize all of this? How do you focus the business of Ralph Armstrong?
Well, the thing is, I'm not going to play for nothing. And musicians have to understand that, and they ruin it for themselves by doing things that are underscale and subpar. One other thing I've been blessed to do in my life is teach. If the music got bad, I've taught at Oberlin Conservatory for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I'm part-time at University of Michigan. I've taught at Tri-C in Cleveland, and I've taught at Michigan State. You got to be a professional musician. Have something to fall back on. And I always made sure if I'm leaving home, it's got to be worth me leaving home. And I'm not going to play for peanuts.
Well, that's a very powerful philosophy. That really is, that you have seen, you see the value of what you are, and you negotiate the value in each of these relationships that you have, so it makes it worth your while to go out and perform.
Right. It's just like you or Jules called me, I'll play for peanuts. Because you know why? No, it's a difference. Because you're friends. People who are your friends, you always look out for your friends.
Yeah.
I got just like Stanley Clark. Stanley Clark is one of my dearest friends on the planet. Man. He's helping me with my endowment for Cass Tech students at Wayne State, which is $25,000. And he's just a dear friend. Stanley needs me to do anything. I don't care what it is. I don't care. It's not even about money or anything. Yeah. He's like one of my dearest friends. When I first went to New York, him and Lenny White used to mess with me. He used to throw cigarette butts in my head, telling me, yeah, look at him. He's from Detroit. And I had on these red knicker boots. I bought in London. I looked like came off a horse. He was throwing cigarette butts. Yeah, he's from Detroit. And I'm walking around New York like this.
I want you to tell the story that you had told at the panel that we did together in Detroit about when you heard some of your music.
Oh, wow. That's still going on. That's deep. I never forget. There's another story I don't even think you know about, too. I'm going to add on to this. I was sleeping. This is when I had my family. I had young kids, and they had a newspaper strike on in Detroit. So I was sitting there, looking at the bootleg newspaper. And I fell asleep. I was in the back bedroom. I had a big house. My house had 5 bedrooms. So I went to sleep, and I started hearing this music. And I'm looking at this guy. All I can remember is, how you fall asleep, you doze off, and there's a shoe going up and down. And I said, that music sounds familiar. That music is hip. Then the third time I said, that's me. And I fell out the bed. I'm singing through an Adidas commercial with Donovan Bailey. They used my music. So I had to get some attorneys. His name was Arnold Weintraub. He's gone now, listen. So he looked into it. He said, Mr. Armstrong, this music is from the motion picture Sliver. I said, motion picture? So I get the movie, and I'm watching the movie with Sharon Stone and Alec Baldwin, and I'm singing in the movie and playing. They had no license to do it, man. So I had Robert Osterberg is one of the top attorneys in the world with Abraham, Frain, and Schwab. And he helped me with that case. And it was quite a great windfall, because I own, thanks to Nat Weiss. Now, this is something I never forget. I can never thank Nat Weiss enough about. He made sure my music was copyrighted. I was a 17-year-old kid. I didn't know anything about that. But guess what? He registered my copyright. I still got the original documents, and I got them put up in a safe place. And I got paid enough to pay off my house and send 3 kids to college.
Boy, that's fantastic that you were that sharp and that aware of what went down, and you found the right people.
Right, Nat Weiss. He taught me a lot of things, man. He was one of the greatest lawyers in New York, in the world.
Well, you found that confidence to be able to go there and find these great lawyers, as we have on our committee of the Sessions panel, Paul Quinn.
Oh, man.
Who helps out, many, many musicians in the exact same challenges. So I got to ask you, what motivates you, Ralph?
What motivates me right now is trying to help young people. I've donated a lot of instruments at Cass Tech and young bass players. Just last week, we gave an instrument to a young bass player. His name is Jeremiah Edwards. And this young guy is just gifted. My friend, Tony Muhammad, is part of the Basement organization. And we gave him a brand new Ibanez 6-string with the Jeff Berlin design.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
We got to help our young people. So that's what's motivating me now at this age, is helping young people, because what I see in the country of United States of America is men don't want to spend time mentoring people. I got this kid, he was playing the cycle of force. Da boo 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 doo boo doo. I said, where you learned that? He said, I learned it from you. I was watching. I said, golly. And it makes me feel good. We got to pass it. Just like Ron Carter and James Jamerson passed it to me. Yeah. That's why I can never thank the Jamerson family. Me and Ann Jamerson and Penny, I'm always in touch with. We talk all the time. Yeah. Because this man mentored me. And so did Ron Carter did, immensely. He made me play a C scale 182 times until it sounded musical. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It doesn't sound good. But do it again. And he's watching the basketball game with Walt Frazier and the Knicks. I'm like, doom, doom. And finally, it's getting better about the 129th time. Again. And then he had me playing in all keys and technique, So it's just a lot I tell you about. I could talk for 3 hours. I've had such a wonderful life, man.
Ron is a beautiful man. I had the wonderful opportunity of interviewing him also. One of my all-time favorite. Totally, he's such a deep, deep person. Let me ask you one final question in closing.
No, you ask me more than that. Go ahead, man.
What would you say to this young generation? They're out there. They've got the passion to learn. They've got the sparkle in their eyes. What kind of advice would you give them to give them that springboard to reach that dream?
One thing is never be closed-minded. Always try to listen to new concepts. The second is researching and reading as much as possible. Because what's happening in our country, we have a country full of dummies. I'm telling you, what's really frightening to me? My elementary teacher passed last year. Her name was Lily Welch. She taught me the 8-tone scale in the 2nd grade. She taught me triads in the 2nd grade. She taught me how to build a chord in the 2nd grade. Beautiful. She taught me the Lydian scale mode in the 2nd grade. I got college students that don't know that. It's unbelievable. And then especially learning how an instrument functions. Know the science of it, the physics, become an intellectual of the instrument. And that's something that bass players don't get. And what kills me, this is one thing that really, it makes me crack up with musicians. This is a true story. I got to tell you this. They always say, well, I got to get this. The guy called me the other day. I want this bassist. It's a fine German. It's got the best wood and it is this and it's a pressure and it's this. And I said, well, how the hell does it sound? and that's what it doesn't matter. It's a bass is how it sounds. I got a friend of mine plays in a major symphony. He plays a K bass, and I know if I can do this, but I'm going to do this is a true story. I have a friend of mine who's one of the greatest bass players in the world. His name is Dave Holland. Yeah. And that's a true story. A certain older person was saying to Dave, you need a better bass. And Dave said, do you know this bass is 300 years old? And the person said, what's wrong with you? They made bad basses 300 years ago. See what I'm saying? It's about how it sounds. Yeah. That's paramount. I mean, you could play all the notes in the world. Like Miles would always tell me, said, I don't want you to play too much. Just make a sound that's big. Yeah. Make the bass. That's why I got the gig. You got to make the bass fat sound. Yeah. The musicians get too hung up in, you got to have good equipment. I believe in, I'm a string junkie. I've got the best. I got Aguilar amps. I've got some custom-made Mesa stuff, man. It's out of this world. I've got some Harkey stuff. I got some Harkey stuff that's out of this world.
Yeah.
You know, you got to have good equipment. But I've played. It's a funny thing. I got a little bitty 40-watt Fender amp that sounds good as all of them. Little bitty. And Stanley Clark hit me to it. It's a little bitty thing. He said, "Ralph, you gotta try these amps." You know, I said, "Let me hear it. It look like something from what is it, Toys R Us or something." This thing, it sounds like $1 million.
Well, Ralph,
sounds.
This is incredible advice for this young generation to hear. The fact that they've got to step into the fact of having an open mind, focus on their sound, and really, I think something which you embody so great is the great enthusiasm that you have in music. This is a must. You do that so well. Ralph.
It's a gift. And one other thing, too. This is something I really, really want to interject in this conversation. Musicians got to quit. You know, if you want to drink, it's okay to drink, but do it after you finish playing. You will never see me drink anything while I'm playing music. It's a gift. After the job, I like my Veuve Clicquot or Cabernet, just like Herbie Hancock. He'll have his Remy Martin or something, you know, after the job. We don't play intoxicated or buzzed. It's an art form. You can't do that. You know, have discipline. You know, get high for getting the money. You know, it's like you have some. Then what kills me about all this, they wonder why they're not successful.
Well, this is fantastic advice, Ralph. It really, really is. And what you say is right on the money, because it really is a matter of having the integrity and the value for what you believe in, bringing that to your instrument. You have done that emphatically. The person that you are, the honest integrity that you have, comes out through every note that you play. For that, we love you so much, Ralph. Thank you so much for the Artist Series.
Thank you, Don. Please.
Fantastic.
All right, now.
Dom Famularo here, the Sessions panel. This is so exciting. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Click the subscribe button to be a part of what we're doing. The views help us tremendously. All of your comments, we read them and react to them. This is incredible. The support you're giving us is great. The Sessions panel, we'll see you real soon.